Chris Tucker spoke those words before tens of thousands of people at the Live Aid event in 2005, when he was still at the peak of his fame, a Hollywood star, a symbol of laughter, a man the world believed could never know pain. But no one knew that behind that radiant smile and vibrant voice was a heart slowly breaking. He called on the world to fight poverty, while he himself was drowning in another kind of hunger, the hunger for faith, for peace, for meaning. The world listened, applauded, and cheered, but few realized that the man standing on that stage was beginning to lose the most precious thing of all, his true self. From the soul of Rush Hour to the highest-paid actor in the world, from a comedy icon to a man who vanished in silence, Chris Tucker's journey is a bittersweet reflection of the tragedy of fame. Now at 64, he is no longer the king of comedy who made the world laugh, but a man looking back at his past and asking himself what turned his laughter into an empty echo. A childhood in a cramped house in Atlanta. Before millions laughed because of him, there was a little boy named Chris Tucker who laughed to forget poverty. Behind the bright lights, few knew he was born in a small house in Decatur, a dusty suburb of Atlanta, where the smell of his father's cleaning chemicals and his mother's prayers mingled with the dampness of old wooden walls. The youngest of 6 siblings once carried buckets and mops mimicking the pastor's voice as he cleaned, making his parents burst into laughter. It was in those cramped rooms that Chris Tucker's first laughter was born, not from joy, but from survival. His father, Norris Tucker, worked in industrial cleaning. Every morning he woke his son at 4 a.m., handed him a bucket and a mop taller than he was. "If you want to live, you have to work," he said. His mother, Mary Louise, was a woman of God so devout she never missed a single service. She prayed before every meal, even when the table had only bread and a plate of beans. To her, the laughter of her children was a miracle, a sign that God was still watching over them. Tucker grew up between 2 worlds, his father's chemicals and his mother's faith, and both would mark him for life. Neighbors still say the Tucker house was always noisy. 6 kids, 1 old TV, and 1 shared meal in a kitchen so small you had to fight for a chair. But it was there that Chris discovered the power of laughter. When his siblings fought, he imitated his father. When his mother was sad, he mimicked the pastor's booming sermon voice. The whole family laughed. For a moment, poverty vanished. "If we don't laugh, we'll cry," Chris said, at the age of 10. That innocent line later became the life motto of a comedian who would shake Hollywood. At Columbia High School, Chris wasn't the model student. He once said, "I wasn't good at school, but I knew how to make people laugh." He loved imitating Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor, and Michael Jackson, 3 idols who taught him that laughter could be a weapon. During recess, he'd moonwalk across the schoolyard, bending down to shout, "Hee hee," just like Michael. The whole school burst into laughter. He didn't know it was the beginning of a career, he only knew he had found his first stage. Then came opportunity in his senior year. At a school ceremony, the MC didn't show up, and Chris was asked to fill in. He grabbed the mic and told stories about his father waking up at dawn to clean other people's offices, about his mother praying so long she forgot lunch, about his siblings fighting over dinner and laughter. The audience laughed until they cried. When the applause erupted, Chris knew this was the feeling he wanted for the rest of his life. "I want to hear that laughter. Forever," he said. In that moment, a star was born, not in Hollywood, but in a small high school auditorium in Decatur. Graduating in 1989, Tucker left Georgia with $300 and an old suitcase. He went to Los Angeles, the city of lights and illusions. By day, he delivered pizzas. By night, he held a microphone in old bars where the audience laughed or threw beer cans. Some nights he was booed off stage, but Tucker didn't quit. "If they're throwing, that means they're still looking at me," he joked. Under dim lights, he practiced his timing, his gaze, his ability to make people laugh at the exact second he wanted. Night after night, he sharpened his craft. No teacher, no money, only instinct and faith. Then one night in 1992, at the Comedy Act Theater in Los Angeles, an HBO producer sat in the crowd. Tucker took the stage and joked about his mother. "She always told me to pray before I perform, so if I bomb tonight, that's God's fault." The room erupted. A week later, Tucker was invited to Def Comedy Jam, the most prestigious stage for Black comedians. When the spotlight hit him, he said, "I grew up in a small house. with 6 kids. We were so poor we had to share our dreams. The audience exploded with laughter and applause. For the first time, Chris Tucker felt his true power not just to entertain, but to touch people's hearts. And perhaps from that cramped little house in Atlanta, the world gained a Chris Tucker, a man who could make millions laugh while learning to hide his tears behind the peak of fame and the disappearance from Hollywood. When Chris Tucker appeared on screen in Friday 1995, no one expected that overnight a new comedy star of America would be born. The film cost only $3.5 million to make, but grossed over $27 million, an enormous figure for a black film at the time. Tucker played Smokey, a fast-talking, weed-smoking hustler who drew the attention of the entire neighborhood. The role seemed tailor-made for him, with mischievous eyes, rapid-fire speech, and extraordinary improvisation. Tucker turned Smokey into a cultural phenomenon of African-American entertainment. His lines were quoted on the streets, in bars, on radio stations. "You got knocked the fucks out" became one of the most iconic catchphrases of the 1990s. The combination of Tucker and Ice Cube in Friday was an earthquake. One was cool and stoic, the other witty and unpredictable. Together, they created an irresistible chemistry that kept audiences glued to the screen. Overnight, Tucker became the voice of a new black generation. Bold, clever, funny, yet reflecting the poverty and frustration of life in black neighborhoods. After the film, he wasn't just an actor, he was an icon. Just 2 years later, Tucker proved his influence again with 2 major films. The Fifth Element, 1997, by Luc Besson and Jackie Brown, 1997, by Quentin Tarantino. In The Fifth Element, he transformed into Ruby Rhod, a flamboyant, fast-talking, high-energy DJ. The performance stunned the world, a black comedian dominating the screen in a European sci-fi blockbuster. From a small neighborhood in Atlanta, Tucker had stepped onto the global stage. But Rush Hour was his destiny. In 1998, the buddy cop film pairing Chris Tucker with Jackie Chan grossed $244 million worldwide. 2 seemingly opposite names, an outspoken African-American and an Asian action star, became a legendary duo. Tucker's character, Detective James Carter, was funny, reckless, and the perfect counterbalance to Jackie Chan's disciplined, serious Inspector Lee. Their dynamic turned Rush Hour into a billion-dollar Hollywood franchise. The trilogy, released within less than a decade, grossed over $850 million in total. After Rush Hour 3, 2007, Tucker signed a $25 million deal, becoming the highest-paid actor in the world at the time. With his bright smile and machine gun delivery, he embodied energy and the American dream, a man who rose from poverty to global stardom. But the higher he climbed, the thinner the air became. Fame came too fast, leaving Tucker overwhelmed. He once admitted he felt empty, despite success. Money, luxury cars, and mansions couldn't fill the void. Amid lavish parties and multi-million-dollar contracts, he began to question his own profession. "I make people laugh, but sometimes I can't find joy myself," Tucker later confessed in an interview. The conflict between fame and his religious faith deepened his inner struggle. When Friday Set was proposed, he refused to reprise Smokey, believing that promoting marijuana use went against his Christian beliefs. He said bluntly, "I don't want to do something that sends the wrong message about my values." Many in Hollywood thought Tucker was crazy, walking away from millions for faith. But to him, faith mattered more than any contract. Then, after Rush Hour 3, Tucker vanished. No new movies, no talk shows, no premieres. A superstar at the top of his game suddenly withdrew from Hollywood, leaving millions of questions behind. The media speculated endlessly. Was he in conflict with the studio, depressed, broke? Some said he was burned cold by fame, the same light that once lifted him up, now consuming everything left. Rumors grew as Tucker appeared less and less. Some outlets claimed he was rediscovering his faith. Others said he feared losing his true self in the industry. But eventually, he gave the simplest answer. "I walked away to find myself and the true meaning of happiness." There was no regret in his words, only exhaustion. After decades in the spotlight, Tucker chose silence over stardom. He retreated to family life, engaged in charity work, and for nearly a decade disappeared. The collapse of a financial empire and the million-dollar debts. When Rush Hour 3 ended, Chris Tucker wasn't just the highest-paid actor in Hollywood, he was a true millionaire. Over $65 million flowed into his accounts from the trilogy, along with advertising royalties and live performances. At 36, Tucker had reached the dream millions only dare imagine: fame, fortune, and power. He bought a mansion in Florida, drove luxury cars, and flew on private jets. To the public, it was the golden age of Chris Tucker. But behind closed doors, that empire was starting to crumble. Not because he lived recklessly, but because of something far more dangerous: trusting the wrong people. Tucker later admitted he didn't understand much about finance. As his wealth grew, he handed over all his investments, taxes, and assets to his advisors. "I only knew how to work and make people laugh," he said. "I left the numbers to others." But those numbers betrayed him. In 2011, Tucker was sued by the bank for failing to pay off a $4.4 million loan on his Florida mansion. The house had once symbolized success, a turquoise pool home theater garage full of luxury cars overlooking the lush bay. But now it was repossessed and auctioned for just $1.6 million. From millionaire to debtor. The media called it the first fall of comedy's angel. Fans were shocked. How could someone who earned $25 million for a single movie lose everything so fast? The answer lay in Tucker's way of living simple, trusting, and disconnected from the financial chaos around him. While he was seeking spiritual peace, unpaid taxes quietly snowballed year after year. By 2014, the U.S. Internal Revenue Service (IRS) filed a lawsuit against him for owing $9.6 million in taxes for 2002, 2006, 2008, and 2010. Reports revealed he had paid little to no taxes for nearly a decade due to poor management and terrible financial advice from his former team. Tax documents showed years late filings and even complete neglect despite multi-million-dollar earnings. The IRS declared bluntly, Chris Tucker is in serious tax debt. Facing public scrutiny, Tucker stayed silent. He didn't blame anyone or complain. In a later interview, he simply said, "I worked so hard to make a living, I forgot how to manage life." The words resonated with millions, not just as a confession, but as a warning. The financial blow struck his career hard. No more major films, no more ad deals. Tucker withdrew from Hollywood to face the mountain of paperwork. Many thought he was running away, but in truth, he was fighting not on stage, but in courtrooms. Mounting debts, penalties, and interest pushed his total liability beyond $11 million. By 2023, after more than a decade of negotiations, Tucker reached a settlement with the IRS to pay $3.58 million, only about one-third of what he originally owed. Yet the price he paid wasn't just money, it was reputation. The press no longer called him the rush hour star, but the million-dollar tax debtor. Major outlets like Variety and The Hollywood Reporter ran the same headline. From the heights of fame to the depths of financial ruin. When things finally began to calm down, Tucker held on to what made him unique, the ability to laugh at tragedy. In a 2024 stand-up show, he joked, "I used to think that knock on my door early in the morning was the paperboy. Now I know it's the IRS. But hey, at least they knock on beat." The crowd erupted in laughter. In that moment, Tucker proved he had never lost the gift that saved him, turning pain into humor. He told the audience about selling his mansion. "I called the bank and said, 'If you're taking the house, take the pool too. I'm not using it anyway.'" What could have been bitter stories instead inspired admiration, because Tucker neither denied nor avoided his past. He faced it with self-deprecating honesty. In truth, Tucker never lived lavishly like many of his peers. No yachts, no restaurant chains, no addictions. What cost him his fortune wasn't excess. It was ignorance and misplaced trust. After the tax scandal, he replaced his entire financial team, learned to manage his income, and began attending seminars for young artists, reminding them, if you don't understand money, money will leave you. By 2025, Tucker's net worth was down to about $5 million, a fraction of his peak. Yet to him, it meant peace. "I used to have a lot of money, but no peace," he said. "Now I have less money, but I have myself again." Perhaps that collapse reshaped who he truly was. In his recent performances, Tucker speaks less about fame and more about failure with laughter and gratitude. He tells his audience, "I learned how to laugh when the IRS knocks, because if I don't laugh, I'll cry." That line, half joke, half truth, captures Chris Tucker's journey. A man who once stood atop the world fell into financial ruin. and rose again, using the same thing that saved him since psychological crisis and spiritual journey. While the laughter of the world echoed for him, Chris Tucker slowly lost his ability to laugh himself. His career was like a blazing storm. Friday rush hour movie premieres, red carpets, flashing cameras. Wherever Tucker appeared, energy followed. But behind every burst of laughter he brought was a long, empty night. People laugh, but I don't feel happy anymore, he admitted in a later interview. A short sentence. Yet it carried the weight of a silent psychological crisis that neither fame, money, nor flashing lights could erase. The pressure of having to be cheerful all the time became an invisible cage. Every time he appeared, Tucker had to be energetic, witty, and smiling. Audiences never wanted to see him tired or sad. They only wanted Detective Carter from Rush Hour, always shouting, always cracking jokes, always making others happy. But after each recording session, when the doors closed, Tucker was alone. He began to feel as if he were living for others, no longer in control of his own joy. Fame is a double-edged sword. It elevates but also imprisons the spirit. Producers, studios, managers, everyone had expectations. Every big project, every interview, every smile was a burden that had to be flawless. A man who once lived for laughter could no longer find happiness in it. I used to think success was the destination, Tucker said. But when I got there, I felt empty. That emptiness was what led Tucker to leave Hollywood. No announcements, no press releases. He vanished as if escaping from himself. The world thought he had fallen, but in truth, he was searching for his soul. I didn't quit acting, he said. I quit the noise. Tucker returned to what had raised him since childhood faith. Raised by his Pentecostal Christian mother, he sought the church like returning to breath itself. He prayed every morning, read the Bible every night, and began to understand that faith wasn't meant to hide pain, but to face it. He said, "When you live in the spotlight too long, you forget where the real light comes from." During that time, Tucker almost completely withdrew from film. Instead, he traveled not to perform, but to give. He joined humanitarian projects in Africa, with former President Bill Clinton and actor Kevin Spacey, calling for donations to fight HIV/AIDS and support orphans. In 2002, a photo of Chris Tucker holding a child in Uganda, smiling while wiping sweat from his face, spread widely across international media. That wasn't the red carpet star. That was a man learning how to live again. Tucker also began to change artistically. When he returned to stand-up comedy, he removed all profanity and vulgar jokes, once a hallmark of the comedy scene. He believed comedy could be clean, yet profound. "I don't want people to laugh because they're shocked," he said. "I want them to laugh because they understand me." For Tucker, laughter had become a vehicle for faith, no longer a mask for pain. His spiritual transformation surprised many. People thought he was depressed, but he called it awakening. He said, "When you've had everything and lost it all, you start to appreciate the smallest things: a meal, a prayer, a genuine friend." From then on, Tucker slowed down. No more parties, no more paparazzi escorts. He returned to Atlanta, spending time with his family, his son Destin and his mother, the woman who once taught him how to pray. Once a reporter asked if he missed the spotlight. He smiled. "I'm still on stage. The only difference is, my audience now is God." The answer silenced the room. Tucker realized that fame had once made him forget why he first stepped on stage: to share joy, not to prove worth. Now in his 50s, Tucker speaks more about gratitude. In his shows, he often says, "I used to pray for God to lead me to success. Now I pray He keeps me safe when success comes." He no longer strives to be the most famous comedian, but the best person he can be. To him, that matters more than any million-dollar deal. Chris Tucker's journey isn't one of downfall, it's one of rebirth. While many stars collapsed under the weight of fame, Tucker found his own path, a bridge between art and spirituality. He uses his experiences to inspire young people with humility, faith, and compassion. "I've lived through laughter, tears, and silence," he said during a recent performance. "Now I don't need the world to understand me anymore. I just need to understand." The Epstein shadow. When Chris Tucker quietly left Hollywood, The world began to ask, why would a superstar at the height of fame suddenly disappear? Then a rumor appeared, small as a spark yet powerful enough to ignite a media firestorm. People discovered his name on the passenger list of Jeffrey Epstein's private jet in 2002, alongside Bill Clinton and Kevin Spacey. According to public records, it was a humanitarian trip to Africa, specifically Ghana, Nigeria, Rwanda, and Mozambique, as part of an HIV/AIDS prevention program organized by the Bill Clinton Foundation. At that time, Tucker was at the peak of his career and was invited as a goodwill ambassador representing the entertainment industry in a global humanitarian mission. He appeared in simple photos, talking to children, visiting hospitals, attending charity events, all of which were widely documented by the media then as a meaningful philanthropic journey. But years later, when Epstein's horrifying scandal exploded, and the name Little St. James became synonymous with corruption and depravity, everything changed. The internet began digging through passenger lists, photos, and flight logs. When Chris Tucker's name appeared beside powerful figures later accused of crimes, the media erupted with sensational headlines. Chris Tucker linked to Epstein network Rush Hour star visited Secret Island. From a beloved comedy icon, he suddenly became the focus of suspicion. People analyzed every detail, even claiming he had dubious connections, simply because he remained silent. But for Tucker, his silence wasn't that of a guilty man. It was the exhaustion of someone innocent. He chose not to respond. No statements, no denials, no attacks, because he believed that truth doesn't need noise to be seen. However, in an era where social media amplifies even baseless rumors, silence can be the greatest sin. Tucker's refusal to speak only deepened the public's doubts. Online forums buzzed with speculation. YouTube channels attached his name to dark conspiracies, and tabloids twisted a humanitarian mission into something sinister. In reality, all of Tucker's trips were publicly organized with clear humanitarian purposes, witnesses, reporters, and official records. There is no evidence that he ever set foot on Epstein's so-called island of sin, or was involved in any illegal activity. He was simply an artist participating in a global HIV/AIDS campaign, and was accidentally swept into a storm named Epstein. But in the world of fame, sometimes a single stain can destroy an entire image. Tucker understood that. He watched it all unfold, not angry, not defensive, and continued doing what he believed in: humanitarian work, stand-up comedy, and living according to his faith. In a later show, he joked with a weary smile, "I only flew to Africa to help kids. But when I came back, people thought I took a vacation in hell." The audience burst into laughter, yet behind it was bitterness. He had done the right thing, but the world remembered the wrong one. And that is the price celebrities sometimes pay, not because they sinned, but because they once stood too close. The immeasurable losses. Behind the smile that once lit up the screen, Chris Tucker has endured losses that fame could never mend. If financial crises and spiritual struggles pulled him away from Hollywood, then the people who passed through his life only to leave forever became wounds too deep to heal. Throughout his career, no one had a greater spiritual influence on Tucker than Michael Jackson. They met in the early 1990s and quickly became soulmates. Both were perfectionists, introverted men who gave their all on stage. When Michael invited Tucker to appear in the music video for You Rock My World, 2001, it was more than a collaboration between two stars. It was a fusion of music and laughter between a global pop icon and a comedian from Atlanta at the height of his fame. Behind the scenes, they practiced dance routines together, joked around, and talked about faith and how to stay grounded amid temptation. Tucker once said Michael was the brother I admired most. He taught me that art isn't just talent, it's responsibility. In 2005, when Michael Jackson was accused of child molestation, Tucker didn't turn his back like so many others. He took the stand in court to defend his friend, insisting that Michael was a pure soul, misunderstood by the very world he brought joy to. When Michael Jackson passed away in 2009, Tucker was devastated. He disappeared for months. The media described him as a friend who could not recover. In a later interview, he said simply, "I lost the brother I admired most." For Tucker, Michael's death wasn't just the loss of a friend. It was the collapse of part of his faith in the world of art. But Tucker's personal tragedies didn't stop there. As his career's spotlight faded, his marriage to Aja Pryor also ended. They had once been a happy couple meeting when Tucker was still a young actor and weathering the early struggles together. After the divorce, Tucker became a single father raising his son Destin alone. He later admitted that the most painful loss wasn't money, it was time. "I was gone too long. I missed the years when my son needed his father the most." That guilt haunted him for years. He tried to make up for it by taking his son along on comedy tours, showing him the world behind the stage. But amid the applause and laughter, there was still a quiet loneliness. When he returned to his hotel room, it was just him and his old microphone, his only faithful companion through decades of art. Then came another blow. Bernie Mac, the elder brother of the black comedy community, passed away in 2008 from lung disease. Tucker once said, "Bernie was the one who always believed I could go further than I thought." A few years later, John Witherspoon, who played Ice Cube's father in Friday and mentored Tucker in his early stand-up days, also passed away. One by one, the brothers' friends and colleagues who helped shape the golden generation of black comedy left this world. During one of his shows, Tucker said, "When I step on stage, I can still hear Bernie's laughter, John's laughter. It feels like they're still there cheering me on." Those moments were both warm and heartbreaking, when laughter became not just art, but the only way Tucker could still talk to the dead. These layered losses made him more withdrawn. No more red carpets, no more glittering Hollywood, only Chris Tucker, a man who once had everything, now sitting quietly in his small Atlanta home, gazing at photos of friends and loved ones who were gone. He realized that laughter can soothe the world, but it can't bring back the people you love. Perhaps that's why Tucker chose to live slowly, to be silent, to return to stand-up, where he could transform pain into laughter, and where every time the audience smiled, he could feel his old friends somewhere. Rebirth from the ashes. After years of silence, many thought Chris Tucker had permanently left Hollywood. But as he once said, "Sometimes God doesn't close the door. He just makes you stop long enough to learn how to knock more gently." And then from the ashes of fame, Tucker returned not with noise or glamour, but with the very thing that once took him to the top: laughter. He began reappearing on stand-up comedy stages, the place where it all began. No more glitz, no more high-speed action scenes. Like Rush Hour, Tucker stood alone on stage, microphone in hand, telling stories about his life. The IRS failure, Michael Jackson, and faith. The audience didn't just laugh, they fell silent and then applauded, because every word from Tucker was no longer a joke, but a confession from a man who had walked through the abyss and found his way back. In 2012, Tucker returned to the big screen in Silver Linings Playbook, an Oscar-nominated film starring Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence. Though he only played a supporting role, Tucker was praised for bringing a touch of humor and humanity to wounded souls. One critic wrote, "Chris Tucker is no longer a comedian. He's a storyteller with heart." The film opened a new chapter, reuniting him with audiences not through fame, but through empathy. More than a decade later, he made another remarkable appearance in Air 2023, the film about the birth of the legendary Air Jordan brand. Tucker portrayed Howard White, a real-life figure in the sports industry, with calmness, depth, and infectious positivity. Critics hailed the performance as an emotional comeback of a comedy legend. No longer the loud, fast-talking Carter Tucker had become a man who understood the power of silence. Audiences welcomed him back, as if meeting an old friend, not out of nostalgia, but out of respect for growth. They saw themselves in him, people who had fallen, lost, been misunderstood, yet still found the strength to stand again. In interviews afterward, Tucker often shared what he called lessons from God and from life. Failure doesn't kill you, it teaches you how to live truthfully. He spoke about faith, self-forgiveness, and the importance of not losing joy no matter how harsh life becomes. "I once had everything and lost it all," he said during one of his shows. "But when I had nothing left, I realized what I needed wasn't money, it was peace." Today, Tucker spends most of his time with family and in philanthropy. He no longer chases fame or dreams of reclaiming the spotlight, he simply wants to live meaningfully and kindly. He mentors young artists on financial literacy, sharing his own tax debt story as a warning, and encourages them to pursue faith and gratitude instead of fame and wealth. At a show in Atlanta, he said, "I don't want to be the most famous comedian anymore. I want to be the best person I can be." The line was simple, yet it embodied 3 decades of turbulence, from the poor boy carrying a mop to a Hollywood superstar, to a man left with nothing, and finally one reborn from the ruins. Chris Tucker's tragedy didn't end in despair, it ended in awakening. He realized that pain isn't punishment, it's the price of growth. Every loss, every fall taught him one thing: laughter isn't just for making others happy, it's for healing yourself. If Chris Tucker's story has touched the deepest corners of your heart, take a second to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Because here, we don't just tell stories about stars, we tell stories about real people, souls that once shined brightly, fell hard, and rose again from the ashes. Every subscription you give is a way of helping us continue this journey, uncovering untold stories of fame, pain, and rebirth. And who knows, somewhere along the way, you might just find yourself in those stories.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on the screen.